Hey, what's up? We've probably been on a little hiatus. As just want to say thank you to everybody that was involved in the Elite Performer Program launch, and let's see if we can get back into some content. I'm not sure when we're going to bring that back. Anything that is available short term is not planned, and it will probably only be associated with a podcast or something unique. So I'm not sure when the next point we're going to have the EPP available again. So good job on everybody that got in, and everybody that was in on the early launch will get some access to me for the questions or really anything that they think I can help them with. So over the weekend, I knew this was coming, and it has been released for a little bit, which is Pavel's latest book called Deadlift Dynamite here. And there may have been previous iterations, but this is the contemporary. And it was co-authored, and certainly the star of the show here is Andy Bolton, who is the first man to ever deadlift 1,000 pounds in a tri-meet at all, and certainly one of the greatest powerlifters to ever live. So there's a couple things that come to mind when I talk about, when I hear the name Andy Bolton, and one of them is that I was a spotter, or a loader rather, for that 1003 deadlift. I was there. I have said in the past it's the greatest powerlifting meet of all time. At that point, it was, I want to say, 2006 or 2007. It was at Fort William Henry in Lake George, where Bill Crawford had his gym. Many folks, and I certainly always give credit that my mentor in powerlifting was Bill Crawford, and also at the time, a fellow that was very close to those training situations was Sebastian Burns. So that was at a point where I started to realize that as you move up the ladder in powerlifting competitions, there's always somebody stronger. So I was not a WPO semifinalist. I will also look clear in the camera and did not make the same commitment that other lifters did. And obviously that means performance enhancing drugs, as well as a commitment to training, where a lot of guys at that level, their whole life was based around training. And I wasn't committed to doing that. I was a punk. I was a bitch. I didn't do what I was supposed to do. I didn't do what others believed I could do. So it's not a knock on any of those things. But that was the first time where now I'm at a meet and I'm not competing. So, but Andy Bolton was all that you remember. So here's a couple things from that meet that I remember. One of which, Andy was I guess his goal, he was zeroed in on the deadlift. So he did not expend nearly as much as he could have in the squat and in the bench press. He just did what he needed to do to not be disrespectful, but stay in the meet. So I'm pretty sure I think he had a very big bench, but the squat was, I think he went for like 550 and 600 and then didn't even take the third or something like that. So a little while later, I think he's coming back from the bathroom and I'm walking that way. And I give him a big shoulder, and I'm like, yo, I could squat that much. And I remember, I can't do English accent because it just sounds like Australian, but I think he said something like, yeah, I'm sure you can. So that meet was also really, really amazing because it had almost every big name powerlifter at that time, some of the strongest humans to ever live. Now, remember, this is multiply, so some of the numbers were just staggering. Andy Bolton, obviously went for 1,000 on the deadlift, but he's a 1,200 pound squatter at a super heavyweight. Chuck Vogelpohl did not compete. I don't remember why. I remember I treated him, but it wasn't like he was so destroyed that he couldn't compete. He just wasn't in it. That was very cool to spend some time with him. I've told story before on spending time with Louis, and at that meet where he wanted to make sure he came back to see at the point he was calling the kid deadlift, and that kid was Alexander Kutcher, who I think at 165 had like an 840 something deadlift. Because at that time the IPF guys I think had all gotten popped on their testing procedures, so they all jumped to compete in WPO. The two that I remember, but both were Soviets, was Alexander Kutcher and Evgeny Yarambash. And this was the first time a lot of people had seen these guys lift in person. I think Kutcher people had seen before. Louis hadn't seen him before. He wanted to see him pull. But Yarambash, nobody had ever seen in person. And it's just staggering. Just unbelievable to see what some of these what some of these guys were doing, and to see so many 1,000-pound squats, which at that time was a pretty cool thing. There were others too. I just don't remember. I remember there was another Soviet who appeared to be from Asian descent, one of the largest humans I've ever seen. And to suggest you can't lift a lot of weight when you're really tall, very, very foolish. These would be like NFL level linemen, but probably 4 or 5 inches taller, and the same width. I mean, I remember Jeff Lewis, for instance. It just unbelievable how big, just physically big these guys were. So that was what that meet was. It was really a very special time. And in fact, as I tell this story, I'm going to thumb through here to find page 83, because when I tell stories, I expect you to believe me. So let's look very, very carefully. And there's Andy finishing. And I'd like you to try to look very, very closely to this fellow right here. And that's me. I'm wearing a Metal Militia shirt from Bill's Gym. This was one of the other spotters and loaders, obviously, for the deadlift. And I'm pretty sure that's me right there. So let me double check. 100% me right here, with both arms raised in the air. There's one arm. And when you get the book, you'll be able to see. I remember too, I was afraid to pull the handle on the monolift for some of these dudes. I'm like, I haven't done this enough. You need somebody that isn't going to screw this up. So, hey, the other thing that comes to mind when I think of Andy Bolton, for instance, is something very, very maybe almost a little bit of a tired message, but it's one that I forget how this goes. But it's like when somebody says something, the first thing that they'll say is like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. And then after a while, the next thing they say is, yeah, like, that's kind of stupid. I definitely don't agree with that, but I can kind of see your point. And then after that, maybe years or however long later, then the next thing will say, yeah, that has merit. That's just not how I do it. And then after a period of time after that, the message is, oh yeah, that's always how we've done it. So I'm gonna read an excerpt here from page 15 of Deadlift Dynamite, and I'll smirk the whole way as I read this. Take a breath and sit back, hip hinge. Let me make sure I get this right so nobody thinks I'm messing around. Do not move your neck at all on descent. Imagine you are an insect with your head and your torso forming one rigid block. You will start looking straight forward, and by the time you have hinged low enough to grab the bell, you will end up looking at a spot on the floor 6 to 10 feet in front of you. Well, what do you know? What do you know? For years, there's been scumbags that have done podcasts about me and why I would coach the neck to be neutral, just as it says here in page 15 of Deadlift Dynamite. Because when you watched Andy Bolton squat and deadlift, you would see exactly that neck position. And whether you actively hold it in place or you're strong enough and skilled enough through all of the relative components through your neck and CT junction that you don't have to override it and make that big double chin. Your neck is still in the same position. And I find it very, very strange back then why people would not do it, but because they weren't doing it. And now all of a sudden, so many different resources, including this one right here, would basically say what I say. It's not about getting credit because I didn't make this up. You can go back to I'm going to guess, at some point as early as the 70s, when you watch Hugh Collins squat. And his squat would look very, very similar to what you would see with a lot of multiply hip dominant squatters, where you sit into the gear, where then, because your tibia is relatively vertical, something has to go forward because your knee is not going forward in a more Olympic or athletic looking squat. So his head is here and his trunk is here. So he's really hitting that 6 to 10 feet here that Pavel and or Andy's talking about. So in this book, it's really just like a lot of things. It's very, very coherently developed, where a story is told, where you have choices, where you can follow programming and ideas, or you can just kind of plug different things into what you're already doing. It's always highly conceptual, but at the same time, you can be very, very pragmatic and follow everything here, where it is not only deadlift. There's always things for warm up. There's always things to understand gap analysis in terms of bringing up weak links. There's several different options to program for novice, intermediate, and advanced. We talk about the book talks about the squat, talks about the bench press, talks about a lot of other ideas that are all going to complement the deadlift. Or why somebody else, some of the other things that they might be doing as to why they're deadlifting in the first place. So strongfirst.com is where you're going to find Deadlift Dynamite. I'm always very, very privileged to have the connections that I do to Pavel Tsatsouline, and it is not just hyperbole to say that, because this book is useful. Is better than and when I say useful, that's not a mediocre statement. That's this has high utility, and I think it's something that would be of value to check out. What I would love to see is perhaps some athletic development coaches, some sport, they're more in the sports training or athletic development space, and they find that maybe certain measures are not as robust as they think they should be, and they're ready to make some changes. Well, why don't we look at something like this? Why don't we look at some folks that have much more of a functionally myopic approach? As long as you say functional, that makes it okay. In terms of strength, which is a significant component to power, it might have a big pinch on how you program, but this will also lead you to some significant research that might also help you make your decision. So hopefully that all makes sense. Pack neck is probably exactly how you're going to learn how to do that in this book. And by the way, on page 16, it does say optimal neck position is hotly debated. More than one correct answer. Of course, you can do whatever you want. Remember, don't confuse me for somebody that cares. Witnessed a variety of liveness of world record holders. Hey, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that you should do what a world record holder does. Let's learn what they do and see what's applicable. Just because they won a world record, just because his name is Andy Bolin and is the greatest deadlifter of all time, doesn't mean that that's exactly what you should do just because he did it. Let's do it because there's some merit, there's some science, and there's things that apply to what you do. So hopefully that all makes sense. And if any time along the way you're running through the Crichton section of Mobile, Alabama, anybody that sees a leprechaun, say yeah.